It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello friends, I am Rob, and this is my State of the Dungeon address. This is for the game that took place on November 3rd, 2022. The game was 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, Dragon Heist, Adventure Path. We sadly had to say goodbye to one of the players in our group, at least for the time being. The player of Felix is not going to be with us anymore, so his character quietly faded out into nature. There were no major threads built around him or anything like that, as he had always been more of a kind of a putting himself as an insurance policy for the party and always observing everything and standing ready to act. Didn't leave him being very proactive and tied up into many things, so it's relatively easy to say farewell to Felix for the time. Although, if the opportunity should arise for him to return to the group, he will be welcomed as long as we still have a spot. Who knows what the future holds? We're not actively looking trying to replace him. Just, we'll see what happens. So, otherwise, the group was all there. Zarya, Aldrich, Jazor, Luxor, and Samuel. And we took action again in the Gralhund estate. The Zentarim are all slain. But Lady Gralhund is not at all restrained. She has her bodyguard with her. Luxor's creeping around her bedroom, trying to do some pretty shady things. And Aldrich is there trying to engage Lady Gralhund and the bodyguard. We also, by the way, at this point, Luxor is using his Mask of a Thousand Faces ability to look like Davil Starsong, the agent of the Zentarim. So, downstairs, the library is being plundered by Samuel and Khalees. Khalees has been called to the site, as has Maxwell Maximilian. And at this point, Khalees is assisting Samuel in trying to free the chained book that is attached to the lectern in the library. Eventually, all things give way to crowbars if you try hard enough. So, that was going well. Of course, Jazor was keeping Lord Gralhund under wraps, tormenting and intimidating him. But don't feel bad for him. He really is not a pleasant person, and a coward, a weakling, and all kinds of nasty things you could say about this particular fellow. All mostly true. So at this point, the drama with Luxor running around the bedroom, he tries to go for the children's room, where the Gralhund children are locked away. Well, they were locked away. He already picked that lock. So he pounces over and breaks into the room, which, of course, to anybody who would observe that would have, absolutely cement him as a terrible person. And, how do we put it? He tries to go for a hostage situation, threatening the youngest of the children, 10-year-old boy. Yeah. At this, Eldrick casts a fog cloud, which conceals most of the bedroom. And this allows Luxor to disengage from the bodyguard who is looking to kill him. At this point, there was no quit. He was fully determined to cave in his skull with his big morning star. Luxor dove underneath the bed, and he actually hid up under the mattress. Very good hiding check. Aldrich kind of provided a distraction more than anything. He wasn't particularly on point with his persuasion skills in keeping the Gralhunds off kilter. But for the most part, he did get them to look outside the room rather than keep looking in where Luxor was actually hidden away. He noticed where Luxor was. So at this point, there's a bit of a furor. Khalees eventually pops the chain that's holding the book down. Samuel greedily dives into the book and releases 3 specters. Not ideal, certainly. And at this point, they're screaming for Jazor to come in and save them because Paladin. But Zarya comes into the room. She tries to help. She has a magical axe that actually can hurt specters. Samuel just keeps looking through the book, looking for whatever he can. It's dark. There's all kinds of bad things that have happened, and they're detailed in this book about devil pacts through the generations and the fact that they have some tieflings in their family. As a matter of fact, the eldest daughter of the Gralhunds currently is a tiefling. So, yeah, that's a thing. And that's what Samuel spent his time doing, is yelling about this. He did not engage in the fight with the specters. Eventually, the group managed to beat down 2 of them, and Jazor did turn one of the specters. So it was no longer a combatant. They finally defeated the 2 specters. Only Zarya got hit by it, and she avoided the absolutely terrible effect of its deadly touch. And that was basically it for that drama, and now they have all the information they need. Lord Gralhund is a broken man. He heard all of this stuff being read out to everybody who could hear, which are those 4 veteran guards who were trying to stop Jazor. Jazor was holding Lord Gralhund up by his collar, and the guards wanted to free their boss. But their enthusiasm waned as they found out all of the details that the Gralhunds have been up to, and realizing that these adventurers now know this, they don't think their employers are going to be their employers for too much longer either. Apparently, Lady Gralhund also realized that the jig was up, so she directed her bodyguard to walk back to the room. She took her children, and she went out onto the balcony, locked the door behind her. And what happened then? The group lost sight of her. Ooh. They were worried about that one. She could have teleported away. She could have done anything. What she did was she drank a potion of levitation, clutched her children, stepped over the railing, floated down, and attempted to get into her horse in the stable. This did not work because at this point the watch had showed up and they were covering the stable door. So as she tried to get out, they stopped her. The group did not know this until later, but it was a revelation they cheered for. But at this point, the group got together. They're talking about what to do, and they had a nice talk with the bodyguard, who is a half-orc. He's the Gralhund's bodyguard, but all of a sudden, his boss is a broken wreck. The wife, who he actually respected for being the driving force of their family, she's gone, and he doesn't know if she'll ever get in touch with him again. He's got enough money to live on, and he has nothing to gain by fighting anymore. So he cooperates. He tells them everything they need to know because, why not? Deep down, he's got nothing to gain by hiding their secrets. They're already going to be out in the open. So he tells them what they should know. Mostly regarding the fact that the Nimblewright had already been sent away with the Stone of Golorr. About 15 minutes before the group arrived. They sent it away because the Zentarum uprising, killing the guards and trying to get the stone. Well, Lady Gralhund got rid of the stone. Where did she get it to? They don't know at this point, and Lord Gralhund is useless. Lady Gralhund was clearly the motivating factor behind the group. They also found the interesting costumery they had. Secreted underneath the wood chest in their room, there's a false panel, which Luxor eagerly found once he was told that it was there, because Gralhund just blurted it out, trying not to get eaten by Jazor. And turns out they had nice cloaks. Holy symbols of Asmodeus, or unholy symbols in the old terms. And devilish masks. Yes, this is their late night activities. So, the Gralhunds are in trouble. At this point, the City Watch comes in. And once again, Barnabas, Blastwind, and Sergeant Crowley. The group is really starting to take a shine to these guys. They are very competent guards. They're members of the Watch, and they're brilliant. Blastwind is eccentric, but he's very good at what he does. Crowley is tough and knows the streets, and also very good at what they do. So, yeah, they came in, took in at a glance what was going on, listened to what the party said, and they're willing to work with adventurers. They're willing to work with the party. And while they aren't deputizing them necessarily, they tell them, keep us in the loop. We'll back you up on anything that comes up. Which the group is grateful for, because they know they have backup if they get in over their heads against some of these divisive factions. They already know the Zentarum hate them. They already know that there's a cult of Asmodeus, and they've just gotten rid of a couple of their ancillary members to the Watch will take care of. And, well, the Xanathar's Guild probably still hasn't forgiven them for busting up that first place. So, at this point, things are kind of rocky. They don't know where the stone is. They don't know where the Nimble Right is. That's when Master Blastwind actually tells them, oh, that's why we caught Lady Gralhund trying to escape with her 2 children. And they're all like, yes! Yes, we got her! All of that, and fortunately, the Watch are pretty smart, and the dying screams of several guards outside the house eventually got enough attention in the North Ward that the Watch eventually did show up. So they took possession of the grounds. The party passed on everything that they wanted to. They tried to take the book. That didn't happen. Pell and Blaston took it for evidence. But they did grab 1 or 2 small souvenirs. Honestly, the Gralhunds weren't rich. They had the estate and not much else, which is why they were so desperate for trying to get something out of this whole deal. And if they could have come away with the horde of dragons that the party is pursuing, that would have been a real feather in their cap. But they didn't. So they're going to jail for a long, long time unless something odd happens. So, party's feeling pretty good about themselves. Blastwind and Crowley ask them if they want to sit in on the interrogation. They say, yes, absolutely, we want to find out anything we can. So, because the space is limited, only 2 were allowed to go in. So at this point it was Jazor and Samul. Samul was going to use his Detect Thoughts spell. Which, interestingly enough, Blastwind declined to use magic in the interrogation. But he didn't have a problem with somebody else doing that. And he gave Samul an energy potion so he could restore his spell casting capacity enough to cast Detect Thoughts 1 more time. So, they confronted Lady Gralhund. And she's a tough bird. Very tough. This wasn't a bluster will get you by. No, she was way too disciplined for that. This was not a we'll threaten you with bad things. She was okay with that. The only way they made her crack was when Jazor made a very smart comment where he dictated all the things that would happen to her children and any other legacy for the family. That was enough to get her an in. And Samul pounced on that because he scanned off of her thoughts and realized, yeah, that's the only thing that's really going to make this work. So, she is now cooperating. She told them where she sent the stone to. It turns out that they were working with a wizard out in the dock ward, Mistshore. Her name is Grinda. She's a little eccentric, but apparently the Nimble Right was told to bring the stone to her. And it looks like it was going to. So, the group now have a destination to go. The thing is, they've used most of their magic. They are running very, very low at this point. They're in good health. I mean, they fought well. They've done a lot. But they're pretty much down to cantrips. Jazor's down to next to no healing and has used up almost all of his abilities. It really is kind of a a tough situation for third level adventurers to be in. They have some capacity now, but they're all used up. Still, it's important to stay on the tail of the nimble right, so they go to Mistshore. And along the way, they get accosted by a street person who enthusiastically tells them, if they're here going around, there may be some trouble that they could get a warning about if they're willing to cough up a silver. Well, they gave him a gold. And he said, okay, sure, there's some Xanathar thugs that went that way. They're there with a dwarf, and they've been here in the district for a few hours. But they're the ones making all that racket at the end, and they can now hear shouting from a deep dwarven voice. And they're like, we better get going. So they take off. Sure enough, there's a dwarf with a hatchet. And he is loudly shouting at somebody inside of this building at the end of the hall with this large structure built over the water. But he's yelling at her to open up. And he doesn't sound happy. The group shows up and he gets a lot less happy. And at first he's like, we're outnumbered. I don't want to fight you. And they're like, good. All right, just, we want what you're after, so move on. And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll move on. We'll move on, no problem. Except for all of our... And one of them wisely says, and tell all of your backstabbers and assassins and thieves to take off. And he's like, well, that's a problem because they're guys. Rawr! They didn't have backstabbers and assassins and thieves. They had a bunch of dock workers that they paid a gold a pop to come jump out and overbear these adventurers. This did not go well, because going before any of them was Aldrich, who cast his fog cloud again. I believe that's probably his last spell he could cast of the day, outside of cantrips. And, well, there goes your ambush, because the party knew where they showed up, and they knew where their first targets were at the end of the dock. So they weren't all that badly discomfited, but all these thugs that just showed up, yeah, they didn't go very well. Samuel ran off and he used a corrosive acid spell from Tasha's. He hit a couple of them. It's a nifty spell too. Got to get your opponents to line up, but it can be really impressive. A couple of them tried jumping on the party from above, but the fog cloud, they missed. Splat. Zarya was just mugging people. She was in her element. It was one-sided. Jazor immediately moved up to engage the dwarf. Loxor had climbed on top of a building before the fog cloud, so he kind of knew where he wanted to go. He tried looking all cool sliding down. That didn't work very well for him, but he still got in his backstabbing ability combined with those shadow gauntlets I gave him. He's scary at this point. He's not, hostile wizard against you type scary yet, but yeah, it's a pretty deadly combination. I may end up regretting giving those to him at some point, but at any rate, he was starting to just dice people. They diced one of the Zentarum guards, Xanathar guild guards. Sorry, just a thug, really. Just diced him down. And then they're starting to menace the dwarf. The sleep spell took out the rest of them. That was cast by Max, who was still with them. Also, Khalees was still with them. He was using his lightning lash to pull the dock hands closer. And after Aldrich let the fog drop and everybody could see just how bad the circumstances were, they ran and broke. They were not going to go up against Khalees with his good armor and a magical lightning lash when they're just dock hands with short swords. Also, the ones against Zarya, she made them wet themselves and run away. She's very scary when she wants to be. And Aldrich was right next to her with his sword out, spell dancing. So, yeah, all in all, the minimal death, actually, which was fairly impressive inside the city. But the dwarf even ran away. He disengaged, dove into the water, and started swimming. He was only wearing leather armor, so he could actually do that. Nobody decided to give chase to them or anything like that. There really wasn't much to gain. They know what side they were on, so eventually they knocked on the door. The door opened, and they met Grinda. I've got her over the top crazy. She's very, very intent, very, very keen, but she's madly focused on using her invention to scour the bay for treasure. What's her invention, you might ask? An apparatus of Qualish, which used to be an artifact, actually, but if you want to think about it, it's like a metallic lobster with its body as big barrel that people sit inside and control its legs to crawl or to swim. It's useful for underwater operations. It's got lights. You know, it's neat. It's got these big lobster claws for self-defense and manipulation. Hers has a few minor modifications, like ejector seats. Very short-range teleporters that can get somebody outside of the craft without having to open up a hatch. Her magical means of figuring out how to get around actually flooding the thing to get outside. So, she asks if they first of all find out where's the stone. She's like, it's not here, but I can tell you where it is. You have to help me first, though. And then, okay, what do you want? And she's like, I need you to help me get treasure. In that. And immediately the two mages go, ooh, nice. And her cue was they were just to go down with her, help her get as much treasure. She'd split the treasure 50-50, and then she'd tell them where the stone is. Great. This turned into a nice little mini venture with Luxor and Aldrich and Samul in the apparatus of Qualish with Grinda, and they went to the bay. They found some treasure. They also found an awakened giant shark named Obliviex. This led to some comedy, but nobody got hurt. I rolled so badly for that poor shark. And it turns out that Samul can actually clip it pretty good with those claws. He also accidentally almost clipped Luxor, who got ejected to try to back up the rest of the ship. And the shark really got badly hurt when Grelda herself teleported herself outside of the thing and cast a cone of cold, which did a lot of damage to the shark. And the shark eventually broke and left. She was having some problems with him before, so yeah, that happened. They eventually came away with a pretty nice haul, over 300 gold, which gave the party over 170 gold. So they ended up pretty well. The rest of them were standing around and guarding, and Khalees had to point out, it's really remarkable how our wizards are both off so zealous to investigate the clockwork craft that Grenda has, and they completely forgot about her spellbook that's just sitting here on the desk. And they both go, oh god, we could have gotten some spells out of her. Why did we have to go into this craft? But they had a good time. Everybody had a good time. And when they got done, the impetus for them to leave was that the Xanathar's Guild had built up a rather large mob to come and attack. The party got a tip that the mob was coming, and maybe some advice on how to deal with them from that same street fellow that talked to them earlier, which got him an extra gold. But they didn't want to stand and fight a lot of opponents. It sounded like over 50. So they take off. They stealth through the streets. They figure Brenda could probably help her handle herself, and she's got an apparatus of Qualish to help her out. It's not like these street ruffians are really going to stop that thing. And she is herself a mage who can cast Cone of Cold, so she can possibly throw fireballs and stuff around. She can defend herself pretty well. So the group leaves, feeling that she's going to be fine, and she probably will be. So at this point, the group is deciding, what are we going to do? Which direction are we going to go? And Grelda had told them where she had sent the stone to. She sent it to her family's mausoleum in the Field of the Dead, which is a park on the opposite side of town. Now, granted, Waterdeep is narrow. It's built along the coastline, so it's not as wide as it is long. So it wouldn't take an enormous amount of effort to go to the Field of the Dead. But, and I could fully appreciate their dilemma here. They are wiped out. They have no magic left. Even these 1 hour rests that they've been given, I gave them a free 1 hour rest on the way to Grinda's, is good for the Warlock. Yep. It gives a spell back to the Wizards. Yep. And nobody else. So, poor Jazor is sitting there on fumes at this point. Khalees himself is also pretty wiped out. And Max, well, nobody really knows what Max has. Although Max did out himself. He called himself a sorcerer before, and has demonstrated he knows of Firebolt very well. But he's actually a bard, because he was actually giving inspiration when he thought those specters were going to start killing people. He went up and helped out Zarya by giving her inspiration. They figured out that he's actually a bard. As flashy as he is, he could have gone either way, but he's actually a bard. He might train in sorcerer at some point, but... So, the group decided we can't. It would be almost suicidal, because we don't know what the next leg of this is going to be. We need to get back to full strength. They're still fairly healthy, but they are worn down. So they decide they're going to go back to Trollskull Manor, spend the night, pick up the trail in the morning. Which is fair. Absolutely fair. No problems there. And because they had gone through all of these efforts, they faced specters, they cleared out the Gralhund's manor, they got a level. They are now going to be 4th level when we start next time. And waking up, they will have the full measure of that power. So, things get interesting indeed. Hot on the trail. Well, now it's going to be cool on the trail. It's up to them to pick it up. But on the trail of the Stone of Golorr in the city of Waterdeep. Next stop, the Field of the Dead. We'll see what happens. It's bound to be interesting, no matter what, eh? So, until next time, my friends, thanks for joining me. I am Rob, and this has been my State of the Dungeon address. Until next time, farewell.